Start off the webinar. Dr. Piplani, I hope I'm audible and visible to you. Maybe he's just Dr. Piplani.
Should I ask Neeraj to get in touch with him?
Maybe. Yeah.
And you're audible and visible to me, Mithila.
Okay.
Thank you and good morning.
Great. I think he should be also audible and visible. Yes.
Yeah.
Sir is audible and visible. Good morning,
Hello,
Dr.
I am
Piplani.
not able to hear the presentation.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We
Yes,
can
sir.
hear you.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
I can't hear you. I will try to join back.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah, got it. Abhi I got to hear you. ठीक है.
Okay, great, sir. Welcome, very warm welcome and good morning. Very happy and excited to have both of you. We have Shipra Datta, and of course, both of you will be introducing formally. I'll just request Aradhna to kickstart the meeting. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. GHRDC welcomes you to today's webinar titled Our Architecture Graduates Building for India's Climate Future. Traditional Wisdom Meets Modern Design. Thank you everyone for taking out time and joining in with us today. We are delighted to have with us experts from the industry and academia for the discussion. On behalf of GHRDC team, I welcome our expert panel members. GHRDC, as many of you would be aware, is a 28-year-old education research firm dedicatedly working in the education sector in the area of ranking, training, mentoring, and research with the sole aim of working on upgrading the quality of education in various sectors and benchmarking the best of the educational institutions in our country. Today's discussion will revolve around the topic, are the architecture graduates in India responding to climate change challenges by blending traditional building wisdom with contemporary design approaches, and how there is a need for the architects of today to use the traditional wisdom and practices while also incorporating new technologies and materials suited for the urban environments amidst the impending climate change that we are already witnessing. We'll be inviting our distinguished speakers to talk about this exciting topic. Also, I would request our wonderful attendees to type in their questions for our speakers in the chat box given along with the name of the speaker it is addressed to. Now, I would read out the profiles of our eminent speakers for today. Dr. Naveen Piplani. Dr. Piplani holds a PhD in architecture from Susant University, India, and an MA in conservation studies from University of York, UK. He was recently appointed as Senior Project Specialist at the Jetty Conservation Institute, USA. Currently, he is the Dean Academic and Research and Director Creative Cluster in Sushant University, an integration of architecture, design, and planning schools. As President, E-Commerce India, he represented e-commerce at G20 Culture Team meetings held under the Indian presidency in 2023. In 2012, he was appointed as a founding principal director, Intact Heritage Academy for Training, Research and Capacity Building in Culture Heritage Conservation in India. Dr. Piplani is a Hamlin Filton Fellow in Conservation Studies and Director of Studies MA Conservation Studies at University of York. In 2002, he had set up his conservation practice in New Delhi and worked on a wide range of projects, most significantly the Taj Mahal. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Ms. Shipra Datta. Ms. Datta is the Senior Vice President at IDEC Limited, a leading infrastructure advisory and development organization. Ms. Datta brings over 24 years of multidisciplinary experience spanning infrastructure consulting, business development, urban and industrial development, and project leadership. Her career includes senior positions such as Vice President at Fitchner Consulting Engineers Limited and Business Unit Head Urban and Industrial Development at Rodic Consultants, along with business development roles at Aegis in India and project design roles Earlier in her career, Ms. Datta's expertise lies in the infrastructure consulting, strategic partnerships, feasibility studies, process improvement, and sustainable development solutions that support urbanization and industrial growth. She is known for blending technical insight with business strategy to drive value creation in complex projects and has had the credit of working across consulting, engineering, and infrastructure sectors. She has been recognized for her contribution to industry discussions on the evolving roles of sustainability, policy integration, and efficient infrastructure delivery. Ms. Datta holds a B.Arch degree from Birla Institute of Technology, Mesra, and completed earlier schooling at Weinberg Allen School, Missouri. She dons many other hats of leading some CSR initiatives and being part of NGOs, Delhi Drum Circle member, and has conducted dance therapy sessions. Warm welcome to you, ma'am. And
Thank
we
you.
have Ms. Mekhla Sinha, the Executive Director of GHRDC, who will be acting as a moderator for the discussion today. With this, I would request Mekhla to now take over and initiate the panel discussion. Over to you, Mekhla.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aradhana. Very warm welcome once again to Dr. Piplani and Ms. Datta. We're absolutely delighted to have you both on this very pertinent, relevant topic that we'll be discussing today, which is of going to be great benefit to not just architecture, education, but also industry. And of course, the main beneficiary of these webinars, which is students. So without any other delay, I'll quickly jump into the first question, and that will be with Dr. Piplani. So, Dr. Piplani, when we talk about climate change in India, we are witnessing huge changes, and specifically in the last decade or so, these changes have become very pronounced, whether it is heat waves or whether it is massive flooding in both urban and rural areas, or of course, we are all dealing with the effects of disastrous air pollution and many other such issues that we are facing as part of climate design in India. Now, when we talk about the fundamental aspect of architecture education, it all starts with curriculum. That's the first fundamental step. How well are our students in architecture education being prepared to deal with these climate changes in India? If you could just throw some light on that.
Thank you very much. And I must express my gratitude for the kind invitation at the GHRDC webinar. And I hope many more listeners are benefiting. Now, having traveled and taught in different parts of the world, I still feel that we are not dealing with the issues on the ground. Our entire education system is still in the shadow of the West and the colonial. We haven't been able to come out of it. Although if you go back several hundred years, I think we are one of those civilizations who dealt with natural features and climate and weather, etc., in a much more refined manner because of sheer age value and the resilience that our people had, be it natural disasters or even man-made aggressions. We have, as a race, survived a lot. Therefore, that knowledge and experience is carried by the people of India. However, since the education system is still governed by international standards and global this thing and the other, somehow we seem to be in the awe of what is happening outside India, and then we try to bring it, and it's a rhetoric that we all know. So, given a chance, I think we will need to redefine our curriculum. We have over 200 architecture colleges in the country, and we still, I think, our curriculum still reflects a commonality and the generalization of how the aim is that they should be employed. Now, you can't start education system with an aim to be employed. That is the lowest benchmark. They will be employed if they have the capacity and the competency. But I can't promise a parent at the admission interview that if your student gets in here, he or she will be employed. That's not the aim. The aim is to gain knowledge. And that knowledge will then include climate, sustainability, other challenges of tourism, of education, of population, of urban development, many other things. And architecture as a built environment deals with all of them. However, since the benchmark is how much will my kid get after he finishes the school, my arguments fall flat. So, my answer to your question is that our curriculum needs a big shakeup, and that shakeup has to be rooted in the Indian reality. And you never know, Indian reality may be a guiding principle for the other realities. But since our reality is not even considered a real situation, we are only doing so many credits, so many hours, so many this thing and the other to get a degree. That's my starting argument.
Very deep and insightful starting point indeed, sir, and something that will kick off many such discussion points today in the webinar, I'm sure. So basically what you're saying is that we already have the traditional wisdom and of course practices which we see around us and which we've been seeing for, hundreds and thousands of years in our architectural designs and buildings. But it's high time we relook at things and, really work on rehauling the entire curriculum system. So let me now shift gears and move to Ms. Datta. Let's come to the industry. So we started off with our discussion with the kind of curriculum that we're looking at. Now forget about climate design change and all those kind of issues that we are facing right now. You come from a very, very vast, diverse background of architectural, projects and the kind of work that you've done in various sectors. Let's talk about, sir talked about how, the aim these days is more about employment and, getting them on with a job and stuff like that. How would you like to tell us in terms of prioritizing certain things that you look at when you're hiring an architecture graduate for a project or for work in the industry?
Thank you for having me over, first of all. And thank you for that question. It's a very relevant question. I keep getting asked from a lot of freshers and even my professors, who reach out for placement. So very quickly, I'll tell you. So when I hire these fresh architecture graduates from, these climate resilient perspective, I would prioritize how they think, not just, what they know. Because at entry level, I'm not looking for experts, right? We are looking for climate literate problem solvers who can grow into leaders. So all my questions are answers are today directed towards climate resilient experts in the industry. So I look at couple of points I would say highlight. So first point is climate thinking, which is embedded in their design. Can they connect climate design decisions? I look for evidence that the candidate designs with orientation, shading, ventilation, and massing in mind, which has been very, very basic, like sir also mentioned. We've been doing this since forever. So whether the student understands heat, humidity, rainfall, and wind as design drivers, avoids that glass box thinking. I mean, everybody would say that, but yeah, this is something which anyone can do. Then whether the student can explain why a building works climatically. So for me, a green flag is climate logic visible in every drawing that the student shows in his or her portfolio. Second point is, understanding of India's climate risk. That is where you're coming from right now. So I'm talking from India perspective only, which is applicable globally also. Now, whether the student understands the India's climate risk, do they know what India is actually facing? Whether they show awareness of extreme heat and heat stress, flooding, and then water scarcity, urban flood island effects, informal housing vulnerability, coastal and seismic risk wherever relevant. So for me, third point would be whether passive design comes first and technology comes second. Is that how they think? Do they reduce demand before adding system? So normally what we do is, we start designing, but before designing, there is a passive thinking which is required, which goes into design. So whether I prioritize graduates who kind of prioritize passive cooling over mechanical dependence, understand courtyards, shading device, jalis, section design, use active systems, solar HVAC, only after demand is reduced, as per their pre-design concept. So best answer in an interview, which one graduate did answer this. He said, we reduced heat gain first, and then we sized systems. So that was a winner for me. Then fourth point for me is ability to use or learn climate tools. Not mastery, of course, but intent and curiosity is very, very important. I don't expect expertise. Of course, I don't. But then I do value exposure on tools like Climate Consultant, Ladybug, Design Builder, or any other simulation. Okay. Willingness to validate design with data. So what matters more than software is, can they ask the right performance questions? Fifth point for me is respect for vernacular plus material intelligence. So sir also stressed upon this vernacular architecture in the beginning. So my question is, do these students, they see tradition as knowledge and nostalgia? Curiosity about local material and construction, understanding embodied carbon basics, willingness to learn from craftspeople and site realities. It's so, so, so important. You learn so much from these craftsmen, who understand the material, they understand the whole ecosystem. Then avoidance of imported or climate inappropriate aesthetics. They might look very beautiful, but if they are inappropriate, they do not work for me. Ethical awareness and responsibility. So responsibility is the keyword here. I would say strong candidates, they question environmentally harmful briefs, even gently. Understand equity. It's a very important point. Who suffers most from all these climate failures? Show interest in affordable, scalable solutions. They do not romanticize all these luxury green projects only. You see all these big builders, they are romanticizing. We have so much green cover, so much green area. But are they only jargons? Are they only the buzzwords? Are they actually, deep diving and thinking through? Last point is communication. Can the graduates explain climate logic? If you can't explain it, you don't own it. So I assess, can they explain climate strategy simply to a client? Can they defend a design choice logic? Can they collaborate with engineers, planners, communities, and all other stakeholders? So for me, what makes a fresh graduate, stand out instantly, just summing up, is a portfolio showing at least one project which is deeply thought through climatically. Honest reflection, what did not work and why it did not work. Then clear regional understanding and curiosity, humility, and system thinking. So
Right.
I'm
Very
done with it.
well
Thank you.
put. I think for me, fundamentally, what you're saying is that they need to have a very sharpened awareness of, the aspects happening around them. Like Sir was also saying, understanding the reality as it is.
Correct.
And of course, understanding the climate change aspect and this sector in a much more elaborate and deeper way, not just
Absolutely.
talking about jargons and not just talking, but really, really getting into that. And I think what you said to me reflects very fundamental aspects. You're pointing at very fundamental aspects first, that they need to get their thinking right. They need to have a complete awareness and knowledge of these various aspects in their environment. How is it affecting livelihood? How is it affecting our lives? And then talk about technology, and then talk about various other aspects, which can be, of course, very beneficial for this sector. But getting the fundamentals right and it's in its place, and learning from their own observation and their own awareness about things is what you're really seeing that is the key to a good student. Yeah. So coming back to you, we started off with a very interesting question about curriculum. Now, if I had to ask you about one change that you would like to see in architecture education in India right now, what change would you suggest would that be? And this is very, a relevant question for architecture institutions who are watching this webinar right now, and they would love to hear your comments on this. And the second thing, any course that we do, or any study material that we have is not complete without the intervention of the industry also in it. It is always a one-sided story if only the academia is involved. So I have two questions here. One, how would you like to see that change happening? What is that one big change that you'd like to see in architecture education? And how would you like the industry and academia to collaborate on this and mentor the student on this? If you could tell us that.
Yeah. So now you asked me for one change. I think I can tell you 100, because I feel our curriculum is just a piece of paper that is just architecture schools are wanting to comply with what they have been asked to do in what we call in the Council of Architecture thing, minimum standards of education. If my starting point is minimum, where will I even reach? Why can't it be the maximum? That all architecture schools have to achieve the benchmark which is set beyond 100%. Why is 100 the finest percent? Why can't it be 110? So I have several changes that have. But regarding the industry, recently I was in Shimla and any other of these hill stations where the biodiversity and the natural cover and all that. What can an architecture student after graduating do when the industry which is prevalent there is already, they have decided that we are going to destroy our natural habitat? So much of concrete, so much of, long span structure, cantilevers and all. Shimla and I think many other such hill stations are just, it is not a question of if, it's a question of when they will fall apart, God forbid. But these people's lives is just hanging on to these thin columns which they can sway. So that is the product of the industry. If people on ground refuse, if people on ground don't run after the money and the fees and the projects and the rest of it, then only that feedback can come to the architecture education system that look, whatever your people are teaching is only minimum. मिनिमम में तो कुछ होता ही नहीं है ना, मिनिमम तो इज लाइक मिनिमम। अब आप, मैं मिनिमम अगर पढ़ा रहा हूँ तो वो तो फिर मैं तो फेल तो वहीं हो गया ना, मुझे तो मैक्सिमम पढ़ाना है क्योंकि चैलेंजेस इतने सारे हैं। तो अगर मैं बोलूँगा मिनिमम, आपको बेसिक ड्राइंग बनानी आ जाए, आपको हल्का सा सीढ़ी बनानी आ जाए, आपको छत डालनी आ जाए, लेकिन उसका कॉन्टेक्स्ट से कोई रिलेशनशिप है नहीं, उसका क्लाइमेटिक कंडीशंस और डिजास्टर से कोई अंडरस्टैंडिंग है नहीं, उसका ऑन ग्राउंड क्या हो रहा है ये भी तो देखो ना। कि अब डेवलपमेंट के नाम पे तो हिंदुस्तान, पता नहीं वेयर आर दे गोइंग, इट इज अनइमेजिनेबल टू मी। Where will these mountains and hills and oceans and forests, how much will we eat? We have, our greed doesn't seem to be stopping. एक अपार्टमेंट है तो एक और लो, उसको किराए पे चढ़ाएंगे, वो एक किराए पे चढ़ा दिया तो फिर एक और लो, फिर अपने बच्चों के लिए चाहिए, फिर अपने बच्चों का हो गया तो फिर, मतलब वी आर जस्ट नॉट एंडिंग। एंड व्हाट कैन आर्किटेक्चर एजुकेशन itself do in the minimum standards of what we are supposed to teach, 120 credits or 180? So I think the burden of ethical responsibility on education system has been put so much. Everything starts with we have to deal with education. Chalo, ठीक है, you have dealt with education. What is happening in industry is a totally different ball game. They are not respecting architects. They are not respecting planners. They are not respecting humanists. They are not respecting climatologists. Industry is going in a totally different rampant altogether. But the blame comes to education. So, this dichotomy of how much can I teach in 5 years when you've got 50 years to build? Obviously you will say जो मैंने सीखा था उसका तो कुछ काम आया ही नहीं, आएगा ही नहीं। क्योंकि आप शिमला में जाके तो देखो, वहां पे तो ऐसा लग रहा है कि मतलब Tatas and Birlas and whoever these people are, they are producing cement is all going to there are hills of cement instead of hills of stone. तो अब उसमें एजुकेशन क्या करे? 200 schools of architecture, 10,000 students. It's I mean, I'm portraying a very negative, but this is the reality. So, my architecture schools, which was my thesis also, if there are 200 schools of modern education, which are teaching you cement, concrete, glass, this, that, and the blah, blah, there should be 200 more who are teaching you stone, lime, timber, earth, thatch, etc., etc. Our temple architecture several hundred years ago, they were schools of architecture. The way the temples were, the sthapatis, where have they all gone? They are a parallel world. And we've got 200 schools which are recognized by the government of India, which don't talk to these sthapatis. There is no way I can invite a sthapati or a Sompura or a Rajmistri to take an architecture design studio because he is not qualified, he is not BR, he is not MR. That is the requirement of a professor. तो एजुकेशन सिस्टम क्या करे? वी आर जस्ट बर्डन्ड and passing the blame kind of a thing. So I can suggest to you at least 100, at least point by point, ये करो ये करो ये करो. That's my bit.
Sure, sir. Sure. That what you are describing about the situation in hills is, of course, a very extreme reality that we've all been facing, and of course, we being in North have access to such kind of areas, and we have been seeing that with our own eyes. Of course, I'm sure Shipra will also have something to say on that because she has worked extensively on projects, especially in the hilly areas, and of course, you would have faced your own set of challenges of working there. But any thoughts, Shipra, before we move on to your
Yes.
question?
In fact, I have a lot of thoughts. So sir was very right. 1 point nahi hai, 100 points hai. You know, when I was so I worked on smart cities. So just to let you know, a lot of smart cities projects and metro projects and urban development projects, bridges, tunnels, those kind of infra projects. So while in colleges, what we are taught, it is actually not being implemented. Why? Because there are so many other stakeholders. So what we are not taught in colleges is how do you deal with these stakeholders, which are policymakers, government, different government bodies, bureaucrats, politicians even. I'm बस एक छोटा सा example दे रही हूँ. I will not name the smart city. I was urban head for this smart city in a certain hilly area. So every smart city has certain sub projects, like let's say 30-35 odd projects, जिसमें utilities भी है, smart roads भी हैं, urban development भी है, green blue spaces को भी enhance करना है, and then of course इस layer के बाद you have to have a smart component added to it. हमारा basic ही नहीं है तो smart component कहाँ से add होगा? So I was sitting in the office and there is this MLA who walks in and he says, मुझे ना कंप्लेन है आपसे, आपने ये रोड निकाला है, वो उस एमएलए के घर के सामने से निकाला है, मेरे घर के सामने से निकालो. And I was trying to explain to him, we've just been given that municipal boundary area. We are supposed to work within that boundary. तो आपका घर उसके beyond fall करता है, कहता हम आपको काम ही नहीं करने देंगे फिर यहाँ पर, आप करके देख लो काम. So things like these need to be checked. And who does that? Government, implementation agencies, SPB का जो head है, commissioner, has to be empowered. So now students don't even know all these. They're just taught traditional things. They should be put on live case studies and work with us, get shadow trained during their course. How does a work get implemented? What are the challenges? And then learn, back in college. So I think ये बहुत relevant है. That's where I see gap in the academia. So yeah.
Thanks for pointing this out.
If I add to this, ma'am,
Yes.
आप ये देखिए जो हमारे forefathers थे, including Britishers, जिसके लिए हम थोड़ा ऐसे कर, they all built with the material that was available within the 10 kilometers, चाहे वो स्टोन है, चाहे वो मिट्टी है, चाहे वो ग्रास, जो भी है उसी से
यस,
बनाते थे। जो
बिल्कुल।
वो बनाते थे वो हजारों साल चलता भी था, क्योंकि वो सॉइल से ही निकला है, सॉइल में ही जाएगा। अब हम क्या
बिल्कुल।
कर रहे हैं, सेंट्रलाइज्ड हमने मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट्स हैं, और सारा हिंदुस्तान एक ही मटेरियल में बना रहा है, और वो है सीमेंट। और उससे बेनिफिट किसका हो रहा है? उस सीमेंट मैन्युफैक्चरर का, या जो भी उसके साथ एसोसिएटेड स्टेक होल्डर्स है, मैडम ने बता दिया। तो ये जो माइंड शिफ्ट है कि हजारों साल से आप एक तहजीब, एक तरीका, एक ट्रेडिशन फॉलो करते आए, वेरी गुड, उसका रिजल्ट भी आपके सामने है, वेरी गुड। आप एक नई चीज लेके आ गए जिसका रिजल्ट भी आपके सामने है, लेकिन वी हैव जस्ट पुट द ब्लाइंडर्स की development means permanence. Permanence means cement. Cement includes steel. Steel includes this, that, and the other. Why can't permanence mean stone and lime and tuna and so many women are employed? अब हमारे लिए women employment क्या है? आप वो उनको मशीन डाल दीजिए, वो कपड़े सिल रहे हैं, या वो कुछ पापड़ बना रही। वो हमने जो हमारा ट्रेडिशनल कंटिन्यूटी था वो पूरा ब्रेक हो चुका है इस वक्त। तो उसको वापस लाने की जिम्मेदारी सिर्फ आर्किटेक्चरल स्कूल्स की दायित्व नहीं रह जाती, होनी भी नहीं चाहिए। बिकॉज दीज पीपल ऑल्सो हैव देयर एस्पिरेशन, दे आर ऑल्सो कनेक्टेड विद फोन्स एंड दिस दैट, उनको भी तो ग्रो करना है। I think what we need is a conglomeration of, as ma'am also said, the decision makers, the education providers, the industry experts, the people who are going to be impacted by whatever all this is going on, and eventually the traditional knowledge which has helped us sail through thousands of years. Look, why are we even talking? Because we feel there is a crisis.
या,
तो हमने ही तो बनाया है, तो सॉल्व भी हमें ही करना है।
बिल्कुल।
Right, right, sir. And I think both your points are reflecting very in a very synchronized way of not just the challenges that we are facing right now, but it's beyond a crisis at the moment. So if we are not able to take very quick action on this, this is likely to become a disaster in maybe just a very short period of time. Like sir was saying, it's not a question of when. I mean, it's not a question of but it's a question of when. It can happen anytime. And of course, livelihoods of people are involved. And, people don't understand that architecture education is one profession which is directly involved with the livelihood of people, which is directly involved with the mental aptitude, attitude, feeling, and emotions of people, because you're living in those spaces, you're dealing with those things, and you're interacting with your environment on a constant basis. So, coming from that
Maybe
perspective,
I'll just add one more point
yeah,
here, or if I may.
please.
It's just stuck to my mind. This capacity building of these policymakers, stakeholders is also very, very important because they do not understand. As an architect, we can only educate them so much. Decision makers तो वो हैं, तो हमारे बड़े सारे DPRs अप्रूव नहीं होते हैं बिकॉज उनको वो एजुकेशन ही नहीं प्रोवाइड करा है. So I think that is very important. How do we do this? Maybe you all can throw light on, but I think उनके लिए भी मैंडेटेड होना चाहिए कि वो आर्किटेक्चर कॉलेजेस में जाएं, इवन 3 वीक्स 1 मंथ 2 मंथ्स का एक ट्रेनिंग लेकर आए. हाउ डू यू मटेरियल्स के बारे में, या हाउ डज द सिस्टम वर्क उसके बारे में, तो वो डिसीजन बना लेते हैं. तो कई बार हमें ये भी लगता है डिजाइनर्स हम नहीं हैं, ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हैं, या फिर जो हेम पे बैठा हुआ है, टॉप पे बैठा हुआ है, ही इज द डिसीजन मेकर, तो हमारी जरूरत ही नहीं है. A lot of times we feel that. So yeah, so that was all I wanted
The
to
That's a very interesting point.
other option could be that why in the administrative services and the other services which are governing the country, architecture or planning or engineering doesn't have a parallel way to enter. Why you have to only do UPSC? I have done my 5 years of architecture. I have 10, 15 years. I have 30 years, but I may have 10, 15 years of experience. Now there should be a parallel way to be able to interact with people who are designing and taking charge of the smart city. आप स्मार्ट सिटी के जो अम्ब्रेला है उसमें देखिएगा कोई भी आर्किटेक्ट, प्लानर, इंजीनियर नहीं होगा, लेकिन जो काम करने वाले हैं नीचे प्रोजेक्ट, आप बिड कीजिए, कंसल्टेंट आएंगे, वो करोड़ का प्रोजेक्ट लेके चले जाएंगे। तो तब तक तो सब कुछ हो चुका। अब तो आप हमें कह रहे हो हमने ये रेसिपी ऑफ डिजास्टर बना लिया है, अब इसके लिए आप बिड करो उसमें भी जो लोएस्ट बिडर होगा, सबसे घटिया आदमी, उसको हम ये प्रोजेक्ट देंगे। और मतलब हमने तो सोच लिया है कि हमें सबसे चीपेस्ट काम करके दिखाना है। तो फिर जब आपने सोच ही लिया है तो फिर उसमें आर्किटेक्ट क्या करेगा?
Correct.
Right, sir. And I think what you're pointing out is a very important, both of you. In fact, I think there's a lot of collaborative, point that's coming out very clearly in this. One is that, of course, it starts with education and then it goes on to the industry. But like Shipra, you said that the government and officials and policymakers and, people at the bureaucracy level, they need to be equally involved. There has to be communication. They need to see, understand. And like sir has been pointing out again and again in his point, we need to go back to our traditional wisdom. We need to go back to that fundamental aspect and somehow remind ourselves of this constantly, that this is the fundamental aspect on which architecture was built in the initial few years of our survival, and that's how we did, and we did very well in that time.
Mekhla ji, I want to just correct that when we say we need to go back to the traditional wisdom ना, तो 80% of the constituency हमें discard कर देती है कि you are like what do you call पुराने जमाने. I want to give you this thing, tagline. We need to move forward with our traditional wisdom. Look forward with the wisdom, not look backwards to get the wisdom into the future. तो हो सकता है वो narrative change हो जाए.
So, in fact, if you look at it, it's not just architecture, but it's even our physical and mental and emotional health and the way we are living lives right now, which is also moving in that direction. We have industrialized our way of thinking and living into such a great extent that diseases and the kind of issues and longevity that we are facing currently and mental health problems are absolutely at a very high level that we are not able to even deal with. Cancer did not exist at such a vast level, maybe let's say 2 or 3 decades ago. Mental and emotional health imbalances did not exist in our families and in our relatives in our circle, because we had a joint family system. We had a very rich system of being surrounded by friends, cousins, relatives, parents all the time, and being having that unconditional support. So if you look at it, this is a very closely interlinked aspect that we are talking about, where our entire life has become very industrial, led, to be very honest. So, Ms. Datta, again, I'll point out to a very important question here. While we are talking about all of these things, there is one big change that we are seeing in any education, not just architecture, but in any education, and of course, our day-to-day living, which is the use of technology. Now, here is a question that I would like to ask from a very industrial experience perspective, that how much of a technology related expertise would want from an architecture graduate, and how should they supplement or complement this with the fundamentals that they're learning today in architecture schools? If you could just tell us a little bit on that, and then maybe we can talk about energy renewable integration aspect in India and how that can also be taken up in institutions.
So I will say technology is, it's all AI. Technology is the new buzz. So I will say it is not a replacement. It's just a multiplier. And so technology is not and should not be replacing traditional wisdom, like Sir said earlier. Instead, its highest value lies in making traditional climate intelligence legible, scalable, and defensible in today's practice. So, what Sir was mentioning, this traditional Indian architecture already solved many, many climatic problems. We never had all these problems earlier. So, for example, courtyards for ventilation, then jalis for filtered light and airflow, thick walls and thermal mass, then orientation responding to sun and wind, then water sensitive settlement patterns. So these were all traditional way of designing, which we've been doing since forever. Now, what technology does today is quantify what tradition intuited, validate decisions in front of clients, regulators, engineers, and stakeholders, then adapt old strategies to new constraints, which is density, materials, codes. For example, if when simulation tools confirm that a courtyard reduces indoor temperatures by, let's say, 4 degrees to 6 degrees to 8 degrees, tradition moves from romantic inspiration to evidence-backed climate strategy. So architects who are, my favorite has been Laurie Baker since college days. So when architects are influenced by figures like him or Anupma Kundu, they demonstrate this synthesis: low tech wisdom strengthened and not diluted. Okay, the danger is not technology, but using tech as a substitute for climate thinking, importing high tech solutions without even putting logic into it, designing glass buildings and fixing them later with machines. In short, technology should explain tradition and not erase it. Where technology truly adds value for climate architects, technology becomes powerful, I think, when it tests passive strategies under future climate scenarios. Technology should help size system after reducing demand, which we do not do. We just start to design. We do not try and think, how do we reduce demand? And then we design for that reduced demand. Uh, Tech should allow comparison between material choices. Okay. Support policy, codes, and large scale adoption. Used well, it turns climate design into a systematic discipline, not an instinct only craft. So, are students learning enough about renewable energy integration? Short answer is not yet, at least not deeply or practically enough. What students are actually learning is very, very basic, minimal, as sir says it. Basic concept of solar energy, then sustainability courses, some jargons, awareness of net zero, then green ratings, case studies of few renewable projects. What is often missing is integration over installation, real understanding of energy demand versus energy supply, trade-offs between passive design and renewables, then economic and maintenance realities, climate zone specific renewable strategies. Many students, if you talk to them, they would treat renewables as panels we add on the roof in the end, instead of asking, how can design reduce energy demand so renewables actually work? So the gap is, I see it, one should be passive first and renewable should come second. Okay. What climate architects expect students to know ideally is not mastery, but clarity on how much energy buildings consume and why. Basics of solar potential and orientation, limitation of renewables in all these dense intensities. I will not say dense intensities, every intensity, that's how they have become now. Integration challenges, structure, services, aesthetics, and then relationship between comfort, energy, and equity. A student who can say the building needs less energy, so renewables become viable. That kind of student stands out. The bigger picture from a climate perspective is traditional wisdom gives us direction, technology gives us proof, and renewables gives us support, but not absolution. The future belongs to architects who use technology to amplify climate intelligence, not to escape responsibility. Okay. So that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Chitra. I think you've given a good number of inputs for our current students to work on, and definitely balance it out with the usage of technology as well as traditional wisdom. Again, I going to ask both of you the same question and summarize if you can. In your opinion, if we had, and this is for the benefit of students who are both studying architecture education right now and would be graduating in the industry in maybe a couple of years, if you had to define a successful climate responsive architect in today's time in Indian architecture education, especially in the next decade or so, how would you define that for a student to understand and work on some very clear deliverables that they can really work on. So this is a question both for Sir and for you, Ms. Datta.
Well, Ms. Datta articulated very well the four things about technology, education, and this, that. And I think she can do that again for the benefit of the students. In a philosophical sense, I would say that understanding your context and your surroundings is a must. Understanding where you are coming from and where you are going is a must. Understanding what are the benefits of what you do and what are the losses of what you don't do. That is a must. Benefits of economy, both in terms of design, material, your carbon footprint and the rest of it, that is a must. For an architect, the language is drawing. And so he or she should be able to talk less and draw more so that you can show and demonstrate what are the impact and outcomes of your creativity rather than trying to justify with words things that don't matter, things that don't, have any weight. What I see around me in terms of my manifestation and conceptualization and the rest of it is what is going to stay, not my words. So I have only these four or five suggestions, but I'm very convinced by the arguments that Shipra ma'am is giving so, and I'm sure she will articulate it much better than me.
No, not at all. Thank you. No, that's yours. I can see that you're speaking from your heart. So that there's a lot of passion, and I resonate your thoughts. So what I think is, in future the role is shifting. An architect's role is shifting from form maker to kind of a system thinker, climate translator, and a public interest professional. There are a lot of stakeholders. There are communities which are getting impacted. So an architect has to think from that perspective. So if I would say, I have this habit of pointing out, maybe corporate teaches you all of that, bullets, points. So I would say performance over appearance. In a successful architect will ask this big comment 82045, let's say. Not say does it photograph. We are so obsessed with how a photograph looks, how a form looks. Oh my, how Instagrammable my building is. That's not how I would approach. I would say future architects will be judged by actual energy use intensity, then indoor thermal comfort without reliance on AC, etc., etc. Then water neutrality and heat resilience, deep climate literacy, and not just sustainability. Climate responsive architect will kind of understand regional climate futures, not just present conditions. Design for heat waves, flash floods, droughts, sea level rise, and use simulation tools early. Thermal, daylight, wind, carbon. Then the future belongs to those architects who are rooted in local language and not global templates. You cannot, what is happening in, let's say, Serbia will not apply here, right? So you have to have that local knowledge very deeply embedded in your DNA. The future is hyper-local, not universal. Success will come from architects who kind of reinterpret vernacular intelligence, use local materials and skills strategically, design with climate and not against it. Then system thinking, which is beyond a single building. How we've been taught in college. I don't know if that is happening now or not. So building is not designed in isolation. It's no longer an isolated project. When you're designing a building, you're designing a skyline for a city. So a successful architect will work across neighborhood, microclimate, urban heat island mitigation, water system mobility, public space, housing, plus infrastructure, plus ecology. They may design fewer buildings, but shape more cities. I am obsessed with one city concept, which is spun cities. I really hope, which is need of the hour, that the architects kind of educate the decision makers to implement these spun cities. I have been trying my bit. कुछ एक्सेप्ट होता है, कहीं एक्सेप्ट नहीं होता है. Then there comes ethical practice and climate accountability. Of course, the question won't be, is this legal? The question should be, is this responsible? So there are new career paths, new definition of success. Many will be climate design strategies, then urban resilience advisors. I think not just architects, there'll be policy contributors, there will be material innovators, then climate tech founders, research shaping building codes. So there should be, measurable impact, not just awards. So the bottom line is design less ego and more resilience, less spectacle and more performance, and less extraction and more care. That is how livable India should be.
Right. Very
That's
nice.
my case.
Very nicely put. Thank you. We have one or two questions from our attendees who have just typed in for both of you. And one of the question is a very interesting question that we've received just now. It's a question that I think all of us can even relate to. When we talk about sustainability, affordability becomes an issue. Because, when we talk about sustainable environments to go and live in and things like that, we often find that such kind of, sustainable so-called definitive environments are also more expensive, and there is an affordability issue here. Whereas it should become something which is very accessible and affordable for people to live in. So we have a question. I think Aradhna, if you can ask that question, and this is for both of you, if you'd like to answer any. Aradhna, over to you.
Yes, the question is, how can architects learn to balance climate goals with affordability?
Would you like to take?
No, I would want to hear your answer, sir, first. I will definitely address this.
Okay. So, see, the balancing act between whether the choices that we make to be climate resilient and what we want to do as architects, in my mind, it's very clear. The complexities have been made as a product of modernity and, whatever else you may want to call it. But an architect per se, conceived as, well, how do you call it? The person, the goddess, the god of the god of creation, in our words, the Vastu Shastra and the rest of it. When we are designing anything from big to small, unless we see what is happening around, there is no balance. It is coexistence. I should not be choosing between can I afford to be climate sensitive or not. There is no choice. I just have to make those choices which lead me to being climate resilient. The choice is not between the two. The choice is how to get there. And then affordability will, if the demand of that kind of architecture increases, the affordability, of course, today the demand is of 5 BHK, 4 BHK, high rise, underground parking, and therefore affordability, your index has increased. And if I want an organically grown vegetable which is sold by few, the demand, but if everybody is selling the vegetable and everything which is coming right off the field, then the demand obviously will. So, my vernacular architecture, the settlements that happened over a period of time, the kind of architecture that was being done in the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s, low rise, two floors, spread, green lawns, etc. That was the, what do you call, the garden city concept. The garden and the house were together. If you go to Lutyens, Delhi today, which is again being rampantly changed, the house sat within a large acre of this thing, and you can grow your vegetables, you can go for throw, you can go and it's not about, it wasn't about affordability. Even Sarojini Nagar, Lakshmi Bai Nagar, Chandigarh, all these things that the British designed for us, for the people who are working in the government system, from the peon to the secretary. They had access to all these natural elements. The cities were walkable for everyone. For a secretary who's in category 1 or a category 4, they could all walk to the Sarojini Nagar market. Where has it all gone? They never asked the question of affordability and sustainability and there was parity amongst all of us. Now we have created these unequitable divides and wanting to go back to the roots. So first I have created a problem which has gone out of my control. And now I am saying, how do I get to the balance? There is no balance. There is a choice of being coexistent. So that's how I would like to look at it. Make it mandatory. Don't make a choice based.
Right. Shipra, any
So,
thoughts on this? In fact, the
well,
next question that we have from the attendees is exactly on the point that Sir has just touched upon. Maybe you could also mention that, Aradhana, and then maybe Shipra can address.
please go ahead.
Yeah, the next question is, how can we ensure that climate design benefits all social classes?
Exactly the point that Sir was talking about, that it benefits everyone. And of course, we're talking about affordability aspect here. So,
Yeah. So, like Sir said, don't give them a choice. If you are the consultant, you have to tell the stakeholders this is what it is. I'll just give you an example. Coming from Smart City again, you are given a certain budget for a certain project. Let's say 10 CR is the budget. Now, as a consultant, as an architect, as an expert, you know the best, right? The department doesn't know, the stakeholders do not know, the end users do not know. You know the best. So you have to innovate, you have to educate people, you have to communicate, and you need to handhold the client and tell them this is how it is to be done. Don't give them a choice, because that does not work. My experience says the moment you give them choice, they'll go for for a solution which can be done in within 6 months, let's say, and जितना कम पैसा लगे तो आप उस 10 crore को यूज करो, but use it efficiently. Use materials which are responsible. So being a responsible innovator is how I would put my thoughts across, in whether that can be, you can afford or you cannot afford. Everything is affordable within that budget. आप लगाना चाहो ना तो दिल्ली में बहुत सारे घरों को देखो, टाइल्स पे टाइल्स लगा रहे हैं, 10 crore on the walls. So use that 10 crores efficiently and responsibly is how I would say. What was your next question, Nicola?
yeah, so basically there were these two questions. The first one was about how can architects balance climate goals with affordability. Of course, the second was how all social classes can benefit from this. Irrespective, like Sir was saying, there should be no division. That division has been made by us.
That
And
division
hence-
was,
yes.
Sorry to cut you. You were saying.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So yeah, of course, the moment you start thinking responsibly, you will realize that everybody is falling in line. Of course, it will take you time, but gradually. I mean, do not your design. So the end user for your design is not only the top class or a certain class of people. Everybody who resides in that city, in that area, in that region is your stakeholder, and that's how you should treat them. So everybody will benefit. तो वो responsibility किसी और की नहीं है, वो responsibility हमारी है, as an architect, as an urban designer, as a planner, as an engineer, वो हमारी responsibility है. तो बस अपनी responsibility आप ले लो, ढंग से ले लो, everything will fall in place, is what I'll say.
Right. Beautiful points, I think, that have come out from this discussion. Sir, anything you wanted to say as a...
I just wanted to give you one analogy that when we go to a doctor, we never ask him कि भैया इसका कोई cheaper option है तो बताओ. Whatever he says, whatever he writes, sometimes we don't even understand the writing. Whatever the doctor is writing, the compounder understands. But we have so much of trust. This person is taking care of my health and well-being. I will be out of this particular illness or disease. I just have to trust this person. That trust or that lack of trust, it's with the profession of architecture, planning and engineering. ऐसा लगता है कि if you go to this particular engineer, he will make your building expensive. If you go to some other engineer, he will make the same building cheap, which means there is a complete lack of trust in the discipline. That lack of trust is not there in medicine, because here my health and my life is at stake. Here, other people's lives and health are at stake. So I want to make that choice and get that balance. अपने लिए तो मैं बैलेंस करता नहीं हूँ। जो जब सामने वाले को भी अपने जैसा ही समझ ले, तो हमारे प्रोफेशन का भी क्रेडिबिलिटी, वर्दीनेस, व्हाई द डिसीजन ऑफ स्मार्ट सिटी शुड बी टेकन बाय अ पॉलिटिशियन, वेयर एज द डिसीजन ऑफ अ सर्जरी इज टेकन बाय अ डॉक्टर, that both are dealing with human life. So that
Very rightly said.
I can't think of a better way than what Sir has just pointed out to conclude this discussion. And I think this is going to be a huge takeaway. Very, very powerful sentiment, Sir, that you shared. A very big takeaway, especially a student community, and to really empathize, in terms of understanding that what is good for them is also good for everyone else. And beautiful point. In fact, both of you, such amazing fundamental points that have been pointed out for our modern architects of today, who have to be rooted in the learnings of our traditional practices and wisdom, and look at our examples from our past and use that as a momentum to keep moving forward. Like Sir said, we have to use that to move forward rather than keep saying that we are going back. Can't thank both of you enough. Such an amazing 1 hour short, power-packed, insightful webinar from both of you, and huge thanks. Aradhana, over to you for a closing note.
Yeah, this was a wonderful and enriching discussion. On behalf of GHRDC team, I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to all the participants for taking part in the webinar. Our sincere thanks to our panel of experts. Their insights have been invaluable and undoubtedly has made this webinar a success. Thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very
We
much.
Thank you,
enjoyed.
Dr. Papilani.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Datta. Thank you so much. Look forward to having more such insightful, interesting, invigorating discussion points on architecture, education, industry with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shipra ji. I
Thank you
really
very much.
enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you, Piplani ji. I loved, the way you were conveying your thoughts. So we will
Thank
connect.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I will connect both of you. Thank you so
Sure,
much.
sure, sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.